Hello, my friends. Today's movie tells the story of a deaf and mute writer who retreated into the woods to live a solitary life. Suddenly, she finds herself forced to fight for her life in silence when a masked killer appears at her window. The movie begins with a small house in the forest. Inside the house, a woman named Maddie is making dinner. She is cooking asparagus in a pan, checking on the rice, and the lamb ribs in the oven. Maddie reads the instructions for the sauce she needs to prepare. She tries the sauce, but dislikes it very much. She sees a message from her neighbor asking if she can come over, and Maddie says yes. Maddie plugs her computer into the charger and continues talking to her neighbor on her phone. Then she calls her cat in for dinner and feeds it. Her neighbor Sarah can be seen approaching the house. Maddie comes out to greet her. Sarah immediately tells Maddie that she read her book and tries to talk to her in sign language because Maddie is deaf. Maddie can read lips, but Sarah insists on practicing sign language with her. Maddie asks what Sarah thinks of the book. Sarah says she loved it and even tried to guess the ending, but got it completely wrong. Maddie explains that her writer's brain can come up with different types of endings. Any possible outcome plays out in her brain like a movie. She finds it hard to quiet the voices in her head. Sarah asks what her inner voice sounds like, and Maddie answers that it sounds like her mother. Suddenly, the fire alarm goes off in the house. They run inside. Maddie takes the alarm down while Sarah takes the lamb out of the oven. The cat escapes. Sarah says the alarm is very loud, but Maddie tells her it has to be loud so she can feel the vibrations in her sleep. Later, they sit on the porch talking about the cat. Maddie tells Sarah not to worry because the cat is very independent. Sarah invites Maddie to come over and order something to eat since her food got ruined, but Maddie says she has to work. Before Sarah leaves, she practices the new signs she learned from Maddie. After Sarah leaves, Maddie gets a message from Craig saying he is thinking of her, but she deletes it. Later that night, Maddie is on her computer, eating and working on her new novel. She thinks about the ending but can't decide what would be the best one. Maddie reaches a hurdle in her writing, so she decides to FaceTime Craig. She drops the call before it can connect. He keeps trying to call her, but she doesn't answer on her laptop or her phone. Maddie goes to clean the mess she made in the kitchen while preparing dinner. Suddenly, Sarah starts banging on her door in a panic. Sarah hopes Maddie will see her, but she gets shot with an arrow and killed right in front of the window. Maddie doesn't notice anything. The killer watches through the window and knocks on it to see if Maddie will hear him. When he realizes she won't, he drags the body away. Craig keeps calling Maddie, but she doesn't pick up. She sits down to write again, but doesn't do much better than before. Meanwhile, the killer enters her house and walks up to her. Completely unaware of his presence, she laughs about her writer's block. Suddenly, she gets a FaceTime call from her sister, and the killer backs away from the camera. They talk about her novel for a moment. Then Maddie tells her about Craig. Her sister tells her to get back into the dating pool, but Maddie doesn't want to. Then she asks Maddie to come back to the city and live with her to stop isolating herself. The killer grabs Maddie's phone from the counter, and her sister notices it on camera. Maddie says it's probably her cat, but she needs to go find her. They say goodbye, then Maddie calls her cat using the sound of the food in her bowl. The cat doesn't come when called, and Maddie continues to look for her through the house. The cat isn't upstairs either. Maddie opens the door and calls the cat again but leaves it open when she doesn't come. She sits down to write again. Suddenly, she gets a picture message from her own phone. The images are of her looking for the cat, and the exact moment she looks at them on her computer. Maddie is scared and walks cautiously toward the door. She sees the killer standing on her porch. He shows her that he has her phone, and she immediately runs to close the door at the last second. The killer keeps trying every door of her house, but when he realizes he can't come in, he circles to the other side and almost gets inside. Maddie tries to call 911 on her computer, but he turns off the power. She tries to join Sarah's network, but doesn't know the password. The killer tries to mess with her, then walks off. Maddie goes to the door and sees him slashing the tires on her car and hiding in the woods. She writes a message on the glass of the door and lights it up with a flashlight. The killer reads the message and takes off his mask. He asks if she can read his lips, and she nods affirmatively. The man tells her he knows she lives alone and that no boyfriend is coming. He says he can come in whenever he wants, but he will come for her when she wants to die. She nods that she understands. Before he walks away, he tells her they can have fun. Maddie goes to her kitchen and gets a knife and a hammer, then goes back to the living room and checks it. Next, she goes to her bedroom, barricades the door, and pulls the curtains on her windows. Maddie peeks through the window but doesn't see him outside. Suddenly there is a shadow on her window. He knocks on it, and she sees him using Sarah's body to knock. Maddie drops her weapons and goes back to the living room. Suddenly, she remembers Sarah putting her phone in her back pocket. She takes her car keys and tries to activate the car alarm, but can't do it through the window. She opens the door and quickly manages to activate it. The man hears it, and she sees him walking to the car. Maddie runs back to her room and looks for Sarah's phone in her pockets, but he comes back. She pulls back inside and slams the window on his fingers. In a fraction of a second, she grabs her knife and stabs him. The man is bleeding, so he rips a piece of Sarah's shirt and wraps his arm with it. He realizes she was looking for her phone phone, so he shows her he has it and leaves it on the body. She walks back to the living room, and he tries to open the window again. Moments later, Maddie sees him moving outside and hides. He peeks through the glass door and doesn't see her, but figures out where she's hiding. She opens the door and leaves the house, hiding when she sees him. He walks right past her, hiding under the porch. Then she feels the vibrations from his steps on the wooden floor. The man walks around the house again, tricking her to get out of hiding. When she runs, he shoots at her a few times with his crossbow, but keeps missing. She gets back to the house and locks the door again. Maddie goes up to the second floor and observes him from there. When she sees he is at the front door, she opens a window and climbs out on the back of the house. Maddie is careful to be extra quiet. He is at the front of the house, so she throws her lit flashlight in the woods to distract him. The man follows the flashlight, and she climbs down from the roof. He shows up and shoots her. He shoots her again and climbs up to see if he got her. Meanwhile, she takes the arrow out of her leg, and when he reaches the roof, she pushes him off and grabs his crossbow. Maddie doesn't know how to load it, giving him time to climb after her. She manages to get back inside before he reaches the window. Maddie points the crossbow at him and scares him away. She gets to her bathroom to take care of her wound. Maddie pours alcohol on it and wraps her leg to stop the bleeding. She's in her bathroom, crying and trying to figure out what to do. Then she takes the crossbow and sees markings on it. Maddie tries to load the weapon but can't get the bow to the mechanism that holds it drawn. She tries again, but the man can see her through the bathroom window. Suddenly, another man knocks on her front door, looking for Sarah. Maddie doesn't hear him, but the killer does. The man is Sarah's boyfriend, John. He sees the message on the door and wants to call the police when the killer appears, pretending to be a cop. He tells him to drop the phone, but John says it isn't a weapon and that he doesn't want any trouble. The killer tells him to drop on his knees and show his ID. John says his ID is in his wallet and puts his phone down to take it out. He takes the wallet out, and the killer takes it from him. The killer looks at his ID and asks if he lives next door. John nods, and the killer apologizes for scaring him. He lies to John, saying he responded to a call and found the place like that. He says someone was inside and ran past him when he arrived, knocking him out. The person took his gun and radio, so he needs to call the sheriff. John begins to doubt him, but the killer says he is a new deputy. The killer asks to use John's phone, and John gives it to him. The killer pretends to call his station, but doesn't give the phone back and puts it in his pocket. They talk about Maddie, and John says she keeps to herself. John sees the killer's arm bleeding and asks about it. The killer lies, saying the man who jumped him did it. John wants his phone back, and when he gives it to him, Sarah's earring falls out of his pocket. John recognizes it. He starts asking the killer questions to catch him in a lie. The killer dodges all the questions. Maddie is still trying to draw the bow, but gets nowhere. John tries to figure out who the guy is, but is sure he isn't a cop. He tells the killer that Maddie has a key hidden in a planter at the bottom of the stairs. When the killer goes to check, John picks up a rock and gets closer, chatting so the killer doesn't realize his plan. When John gets a chance to hit him, Maddie starts banging on the window, and the killer stabs John. John still goes after him, but the killer runs around him until he falls. Maddie sees it all happen, and the killer thanks her for showing up at the right time. He leans toward John, and John grabs him tightly, telling Maddie to run. When Maddie goes out the back door, the killer runs after her and hits her over the head with a rock, killing her. But that outcome was just in Maddie's head. Her inner voice tells her she can't run. She is still inside the house. John dies before he could kill the killer. Maddie keeps thinking about different possibilities and outcomes. She wonders if she could shoot him or go outside and turn the power back on. She thinks about hiding places in the house, like the bathroom or the loft. If he doesn't find her, she can still bleed to death. Outside, she can hide in the crawl space, but he knows she hid there once. She is running out of time because she's getting dizzy, cold, and her vision is starting to blur. Her inner voice tells her the killer has the advantage. She can't run, hide, or wait. Maddie suddenly realizes she needs to kill him to save herself. Meanwhile, the killer goes through John's pockets and finds a pack of cigarettes. He goes to Maddie's car and takes out a wrench. Sitting on the car, he lights a cigarette and decides he'll go inside once she loses more blood. Suddenly, her cat appears. He crouches down to her and is about to kill her when Maddie shoots him with the crossbow. She runs inside, but he catches her hand in the door and breaks it. He lets her hand go, and she locks the door. The killer breaks the arrow and tells her he is coming in. Maddie stands up to face him and uses her own blood to write, "Do it, coward," on the glass. He walks to the car to get the wrench, and Maddie writes down his description in the open document on her laptop. As he breaks the glass on her door, she writes a message for her mom and dad. Maddie hides in the bathroom and waits for him there. She begins to lose consciousness and doesn't notice him coming in from the window behind her. The killer lets out a breath, which she feels on her neck. She turns around, dodges his knife, and stabs him. She runs out of the bathroom and gets to the kitchen, seemingly passing out on the floor. He limps toward her, ready to kill her, but she sprays his eyes with wasp propellant. She grabs the fire alarm and activates it, further incapacitating him until he drops the knife. Maddie grabs the knife, but he pushes her on the floor, and they fight. He almost kills her when she reaches for a wine opener and kills him. She regains her strength and takes her phone out of his pocket. She dials 911 and passes out. A bit later, Maddie walks out of her house and sits on her porch. Her cat sits next to her. The police finally arrive at the scene. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos.